like I was telling Leanne, we did not, Charlie did not finish up his series. He will pick back up on that. But there was a couple of things that I wanted to get into, and so I just told him I was going to roll on. He couldn't be here this week. I was like, okay, well, you can finish later, and I'm going to roll on. So we're starting a new series tonight. I'm pretty excited about it, and it's called Latitude from Your Gratitude. No, that's wrong. Latitude from Your Attitude. Pastor Phil tried to get me to call it something with gratitude, and I didn't. So, Latitude from Your Attitude. Anybody know what latitude is? Nobody?
Latitude?
Yeah.
It's the height and
Up and down.
the lines to go up
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, like latitude, longitude. Most of the time you hear people say, your attitude will determine your altitude or whatever. And I was like, well, that's kind of tired. I didn't want to use that, so I tried to come up with something catchy. So that's why I said latitude from your attitude. Latitude is the distance north and south from the equator. And obviously, as latitude goes up, you know, you get higher, so we want to elevate from having a good attitude, right? Let me ask you this. Does anybody have a bad attitude? Does anybody have a bad attitude tonight?
Danielle.
Kathy.
No, it was not me.
It
Not
was
me.
you.
No, it wasn't.
You started it.
Kathy's saying Danielle, and then like Bethany's like taking her hand up, and like evidently something
The
went
whole
down.
mom team. Just
The whole mom team. The whole mom team got a bad attitude tonight.
It was the sugar.
I had a bad attitude before I got here. I really had to work really hard on the drive here to stop having a bad attitude. Just, I'm transparent. Y'all know me. I'm honest. I was ready to kick something in before I left from church. So I had to transform my mind on the way to Daniel's tonight. It happens, right? We're human. We can have bad attitude. I mean, you know. Let me give you guys a quote. Pastor's got a look on his face like he's got something real in depth to say. Okay, no? All right. I was just waiting, you know. William James. If you don't know who he is, a lot of people consider him the father of modern psychology. His quote says, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that someone can alter their lives by altering their attitude." That seems pretty powerful. You can alter your life by altering your attitude. Anybody care to just throw a guess out of what that really means to you? Like what, when you hear that, what does that mean to you? No right or wrong answer, or no wrong answer, just
how you react to things. So, I mean, somebody can do something and you can say, well, they made me act that,
right.
but it's all on how you respond.
How you
control
react
it.
and how you respond will determine your outcome on life. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
Who'd you give Finley to? Did you give Finley?
No, I just left John. No, I gave her. I gave her to LaShonda.
I'm just like, had to complete.
I gave her a $10 bill
I had
and
to
slapped her on the
complete
back.
my thought. I'm just saying, she was out there by herself.
I've got to remember we're taping, so I don't say something stupid. You're
We'll start now.
now we start.
We'll edit.
No.
Oh no.
Okay, so your attitude. Listen to this. Your attitude. We never really think about attitude when it comes to Christianity, do we? Like, we don't put that in the same circle as salvation and our spiritual walk. Well, I mean, some people do, some people don't. I say a lot of people probably don't.
Somebody will say something real quick about it.
Okay, so do what now? What did you say?
If you have a bad attitude, somebody will say real quick about something about your Christianity.
But that's okay. So I was getting ready to say, how many Christians have we known that have a really poor attitude? You don't have to mention names. Like, I'm not asking for names, but I'm just saying. Everybody quit looking at Bethany when we ask that question. Okay, stop looking at Bethany. But I mean, have you known Christians who just have a really poor attitude? Like, sometimes you just don't even like talking to them.
Cause you know what it's gonna be.
I know you're probably gonna go here, but
Okay.
what do you define as attitude?
Well, let's hear what your definition of attitude is.
I think it's your thought process.
Okay.
It's the way you look at things.
Your thought process manifested.
So you've heard the story.
Talk loud because we are. So just to throw this out here, I'm trying not to make it super obvious so nobody just clams up. We are recording these not to, and we tried to put everybody in the background, but we're recording these for a purpose to use later. So as you speak, people that are going to watch these later, we want them to be able to hear. So speak loud when you speak.
So you've heard the story of the two shoe salesmen. Both of them went to an island.
Yeah,
They get off a boat.
I was actually going to use that in my teaching tonight. Thanks, Pastor. Appreciate that. Go ahead, though. We'll
of them
recap later.
One of them calls back home and says, "Hey, come and get me. Nobody has shoes over here. This is a waste." The other one's on the same island, looking at the same thing, with the same job in mind. He calls back home and says, "Send me every pair of shoes you can get. Nobody has any over here." I think your attitude is how you view things and how you think about them. The Lord, such as the Lord loves a cheerful giver.
Yeah.
We've got to change the way we think. In the way, and when we change the way we think, it also changes the way we view things. It changes our perception of things. Now, attitude is one of my favorite. We talk about it all the time. It's one of my favorite things to deal with. I love it because it's one of only two things that we are in control of. Kim said a minute ago, I can say, Steve made me mad today.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the power to make me mad.
Nope.
You could say mean things to me, put me down, done a few times.
Me?
Yes.
I was
when
probably
we're
on a
working
day
out.
when I had a bad attitude.
But I can say, I could
Debbie said every morning.
I could very well say Steve made me mad. But technically that's a lie. And I'm sure you'll use the statement later, life is 10% what happens to you. It's 90% how you choose to react.
So we're going to dive into a little bit of what he's talking about. We have not talked about this specifically. We've talked about attitude before, yes, but I have not gone over any of this with him. And you totally ruined. I was sure nobody in this room was going to have known that story, but
I got some other ones you want.
yeah. I may have to get a replacement.
A similar one.
But perception, attitude is a lot about perception.
It's just like before we got here and we're discussing with our children, and Jonah was telling us like ways he couldn't do something and making excuses or whatever, and I was like, well, now tell me 3 ways you can do it.
Yeah.
Instead of giving me excuses why you can't.
I like that.
This is all good. This is going right along with where we're going tonight.
When you go home, you say,
I use that every single
Come on,
day.
give me an amen.
Every single day.
Positive count, positive, always positive.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So listen to this. We have leaders in here, leaders in the church, some of you guys. Some of you may be leaders in your job or leaders in your family. Not just your wife and kids or husband and kids, but maybe like in your extended family, like people look to you to be the leader to make decisions for the larger family. There's all types of positions of leadership throughout life. Your attitude will determine your influence.
Mm-hmm.
Chew on that for just a second. I literally wish we had every single leader, every single teacher, every single worker. Well, let's just go all the way. Every single person in this church here tonight to hear what God is trying to tell us. Your attitude will determine your influence. If your attitude is poor, let's back up. Give me some examples of what a poor attitude looks like. Let's just lay the foundation here. What's a poor attitude look like sound like? Everybody again, quit looking at Bethany.
It's my face, okay? So it's the way that you go in a room, how your face is that you need to watch, because they can read your attitude. There we go, I said it.
Okay?
Even body language, you can just tell when somebody's tensed up or.
Body language is a big one.
Then when you get old, you just can't do anything about your face. I'm
You can
taking
do
over
Botox. Injections.
What's a bad attitude?
I think
What
tone
is
of
it?
voice too.
What is it?
Tone of voice.
Tone of voice. Okay. Body language, tone of voice, facial expression. Funny that what you guys described as attitude goes back to a few weeks ago when we were talking about excellence and how we looked during service, how we acted during service, how we sounded during service. It all kind of ties back to attitude. So really, attitude and excellence, man, they meet up, they pair up and just ride down right down the same road. Because I don't think you can have excellence without a proper attitude. And we spent, 6 weeks talking about excellence in everything. Excellence in leadership, excellence in service to the Lord, excellence in your family. I mean, all kinds of different ways. We're not going to recap that, but I think these two marry up. They join up and go right down the same road together.
They should.
They should, yes. They don't always. I don't think you'll ever get to excellence without the right attitude.
You know, in the Old Testament, when they used the term, he had an excellent spirit,
Yes,
it's referring to his attitude.
yes.
He had an excellent spirit.
You can read in Daniel
Yes.
where it said Daniel had an excellent spirit. We actually covered that when we were going over excellence. Think of someone, we're just laying some groundwork here. You guys hang with me. How you doing, Keith?
Good.
Think of someone you greatly admire in your mind. Okay? Not everybody think of Pastor Phil.
Well, no one's looking at me now.
I noticed that. I wasn't going to call that out, and nobody looked at you then. I mean, I wasn't going to call that out.
Leave it on.
Think of someone you greatly admire in your mind. Think of their greatest qualities. Think of somebody you really look up to, you really admire. And think of their greatest qualities. Okay? Let's just take a minute, mull that over. You guys have somebody in your mind that you admire? People you look up to? Someone you really respect, you hold in high regard? Jesus.
That's always the answer.
Okay? Now realize some of their attributes, some of their character traits. Somebody throw a couple of them out. People that you've thought of that you admire.
Integrity.
Integrity. Meaning, we all know what integrity means. Basically, doing the right thing no matter who's watching. If nobody's watching, you're still going to do the same thing. You're going to do the right thing. There's moral integrity. There's spiritual integrity. I think good character and moral and spiritual integrity, again, they all marry together and go down the same road. So integrity, what else?
Strength.
Strength? Explain that.
Well, to be able to contain yourself.
Like emotional strength,
Emotional
composure.
strength, yeah.
Okay?
And physical strength. You want to start punch somebody.
There she goes.
Where's he going?
She was doing good.
Gotta just throw that in there. Just in case somebody needs punched, physical strength don't hurt too. Okay? Scratch that from the record. What else? So, like composure, emotional strength, integrity, accountability. That's a good one. Accountability. What else?
Dependability.
Like, I mean,
Dependability.
You do what you say you're gonna do.
That is, yeah. Dependability and accountability go right hand in hand. Okay?
One of my admiring traits, person was thinking of, is how they try to put their family first in what they do.
Yeah.
You know, they take
So selflessness.
time out to do the things that they need to do for their family, and you know, traits like, you know, fatherhood, husband. I think we live in such a selfish day and age that when you see people that is selfless for their family, it just means a lot to me. Because nowadays people, especially men, they act like because they went to work and they worked that they don't do nothing else. I did everything I had to do. Did it, you know. That's man. If you pat Keith one more time.
No, he's good at that. He'll come home and change
That's why I was
diapers
saying you
and,
better
yeah.
pat them right.
So selflessness, putting others before yourself, right? Going the extra mile,
Go pat him too right.
right? That kind of, in my opinion, that kind of falls under the category of going the extra mile. Like Pastor was saying, you might come home from work, maybe it's a mother or a father, a wife or a husband, and you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm not doing else, you know, I'm not doing anything for anybody else. Well, that would be a little bit selfish, right? Just because you're tired, your kids may still need dinner, they still may need help with homework, they still may need, you know, help with their sports or, you know, any or all the above, right? So, selflessness. Okay? So tonight, we're just laying some groundwork. We're kind of getting the idea of what attitude really encompasses and where we're going, right? So everybody kind of understands attitude. Has anybody physically admitted, personally admitted that your attitude is poor? Do we have any takers? Bethany? Pastor? I've already admitted mine's poor. Debbie admitted hers for poor. So we got a bunch of poor attitude people in the house tonight. It's a perfect night to talk about attitude. We're going to start tonight talking about 7 biblical principles, okay, that deal with your attitude. Because I feel like that a lot of people don't count attitude in with your spiritual character. They feel like, well, I can be a Christian, I can, you know, be a leader, I can be whatever, and that's good. I don't have to worry about my attitude because I'm a Christian and I'm a this and I'm a that, I'm a this leader, I'm a head of this, I'm a worker in here. It doesn't worry about my attitude. My attitude doesn't, you know, deal with anything. I just think that's totally the wrong thinking. So tonight we're going to start talking about why that's the wrong thinking. I think our attitude, we have an attitude about everything. We have an attitude about church, right? We have an attitude about family. We have an attitude about work. We have an attitude about working out. We have an attitude about eating healthy or not eating healthy.
Okay.
Right? So, tonight we're going to start this. My attitude, number 7. We're going to count backwards. We're going to go from 7 to 1. All right?
Are these in order of importance?
Listen,
She's rearranging them in her bed as we speak.
we're going to have to get our pastor in line. Number 7.
What's your attitude?
My attitude as I begin a task will affect its outcome more than anything else. Okay? Let me repeat that. My attitude as I begin a task will affect its outcome more than anything else. So now let's be real with everybody. How many have started a project that you did not want to do? You did not have a good attitude about it. And the whole project, from basically start to finish, when it all got said and done, just came out to be, ugh. Why is that?
Well, it took me probably 2 hours longer to get it done another day. Because I had to Google Excel and I was in a bad attitude because I couldn't figure out something. So it took me 2 hours longer because I was pouting that I had to do this and not do it my way. I had to do it their way.
Oh. Let's say that one more time. Say it loud for the people in the back. What did you say?
Because I wanted to do it my way and not their way.
Oh, I wish the whole church could be in here to hear that.
What, to remind me?
No. Not specific to you. Remember, what are our Wednesday nights? Our Wednesday nights are for our education, our learning as a church, our growth as a church, right? So when somebody makes a statement that I thought I had to do it my way before it would be the right way, and because it wasn't my way, I had a poor attitude about it. We could take Bethy up an offering now, just for that statement right there. All right, guys, a good attitude. Okay, we'll get back to number 7, but she's got us on a different path here. We're rolling down this path. No, it's a good thing. A good attitude means you don't always have to do something your way. Now, Debbie tells me all the time that I have to do things my way. And if it's not my way, it's not the right way. I'm guilty of that. I told y'all I'm honest, I'm transparent. A lot of times I'm guilty of that. I have to check a lot of times my attitude, right? Matter of fact, again, just transparency among leadership in the church. Pastor Phil and I had a disagreement a few weeks ago about something that we should do here at the church. Not a disagreement. I mean, we didn't come to fisticuffs or anything. I think I would win. But we had I mean, not without going into great detail, but he had something he wanted to do. I wanted to do it a different way. Okay? Now, what do you think happened? Do you think I said, well, your way stinks? And if we do it my way, it's going to turn out a whole lot better. Now, I may have thought that in my mind.
I was gonna say, you may have thought that.
I'm not going to lie to you. I may have thought that in my mind a little bit. But because of character and attitude, I was able to tell him, Pastor, and he can verify. I was like, I don't really think that's the way we should do it. I really don't. Because I'm always honest. You can ask him. We talk about a lot of stuff. We plan and organize and execute and administer a lot of things. And I'll always tell him my thought process. Whether we agree or not, he's going to get my thought process. That's what he wants from me. But ultimately, what happened was, he's the pastor. He's the head. He's the authority, right? And so my attitude had to be, well, here's my thought process. Here's my opinion for what it's worth. But we're going to go with what you say. And what he said is exactly what we did. And I got on board with it. And not only did we do it, but I ran it for him. Even though it's not something I wanted to do. Okay? So when somebody says, you got something? Speak loud, sir.
The strong thing about attitude is that nobody at the church would have even known.
Yeah.
With the way you react.
Yeah. Which is how it should be.
Nobody would even known that you know, that you thought we should have maybe done that differently. Nobody would have known.
Yeah.
You know, and that's powerful. You know, because there's times that God wants us to do certain things that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know, there's times.
There's been many times where God has come to me and told me something, and I'm like, Lord, that makes 0 sense. And I would like to be kind of like what Bethany said. I'd like to do it my way. But I've also found out every time God has told me to do it a certain way, and I had the attitude that my way is better, I found out real quick my way wasn't better. And I should have just listened to the one in authority. So I followed that example with Pastor. We ended up doing it his way. And I got behind it and just support. I'm not saying that because of me. I'm just saying as an example of what attitude is supposed to look like when you really would rather do it your way, but because of the right attitude and the right character and trying to be in excellence and walk in excellence, these are going to marry up a whole lot. We're going to go back to excellence and capture some of that and bring it back. Because of that, we have to sometimes learn, hey, I'm just going to get in line. and I'm going to do what needs to be done based upon, well, I mean, for lack of a better way to say it, based upon what the authority says. Right?
Right.
That got quiet right there. Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying this because you're here,
Yeah.
but I mean, Kathy can verify this. Probably what, maybe 2 weeks ago, we were talking at the auction. And I told her, I said, since the very first, time that Steve Morgan walked in our church, he may not agree with everything that I ever thought, but I can promise you, I've never asked him to do one thing that he didn't follow through on.
Yeah,
I
try
said,
to.
And that's that. The thing is, have you ever told somebody, one of your kids, to do something, and they do it their own way,
Yeah.
and then something gets broken, something goes wrong? It's because you knew something they didn't know, but you didn't take out. You can't always take time for to explain every little detail. This is why we're doing this. This is why I need you to do it this way. Attitude is lining up with, that's what you said to do, let's do it,
Now let's go way back, just carrying on what Pastor said there. Does anybody remember what righteousness means? Way back from our Kingdom series. I'm stretching y'all's memories here. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Remember, we broke righteousness down. What does it mean? If you don't remember,
Right side.
go ahead.
The right side of God.
Yes. In right alignment
Alignment.
with authority. Right? Think about that. Righteousness, we always take righteousness as meaning holy, perfect, not doing any wrong. If we're righteous, but that's not technically what it means. Righteous means in good standing with God's authority, in direct line with God's authority. So, to piggyback what Pastor's saying, if you stay in line with authority, that's righteousness for God. But that also carries over to our character, to our integrity, to our attitude, to our excellence, that we be in line and right authority with the ones who are in authority over us in a church setting as well. Not that he's a dictator, but just because God's chosen a man, he's anointed a man as a leader of the house. He's got a vision for the house. So attitude means, hey, I'm going to get in line with the authority of the house because he's in line with the authority of God. I'm going to follow that. So that's why a lot of times I may not agree with things that he's wanting to do. And we'll always talk about it. And I'll throw ideas out, maybe think of a different way or whatever. But ultimately, we come to an agreement based upon what God is speaking over the church and to the man of God who's over the house. And we follow that authority, right? So, Bethany gave us an example. Anybody else have an example where you started a task with the wrong attitude and the outcome was affected because of it? Every one of us should have a story. So somebody else give me at least one. I've got a good Bible example we're going to go into for that. But you guys give me one more. Give me an example of a project or a task or a thing you started with the wrong attitude and it affected the outcome.
I got mad one time and went for a drive. And I got a ticket for speeding.
So your trip started with, I've been
Started
there.
with a bad attitude.
Been there and done
ended
that.
up costing me.
Yeah. The Bible gives us a really good example of this in Numbers,
Yep.
chapter 13.
Yep.
Anybody know what this is?
Yes.
What is it?
It's when they have the 12 spies look at the promised land, and
Yes.
Jacob came back, and one more came back and said they could do it, but the 10 said no. And then then he said, now you have to wonder.
It's Joshua and Caleb.
Joshua and Caleb, sorry.
12 spies. Listen to this. everybody always said they took one person out of each tribe, the 12 tribes. They took one person out of each tribe. But if you read that, they really took one leader. A leader from each tribe. What would you expect your leaders to have? A good attitude. Thank you. You would expect your leaders to have a good attitude. Pastor expects me as one of his leaders to have a good attitude when he asks me to do something, right? We expect all of our leaders in the church, whether you're over a ministry, whether you're over an outreach, whether you're over a kids class, you're over a nursery, you're over the sound, whatever you're a part of or whatever you're over, we expect the same thing for everyone to have a good attitude, right? Because it's going to affect your outcome of whatever you're doing, whatever you're attached to. So we know Moses told him, he said, go into the land, go to the mountain, look at the land, see the people, see if they're strong, see if they're weak, see if they're few, see if they're many. Is the land good or bad? Is it rich or poor? Go scout it out, come back. And he said, be of good courage, bring fruit from the land. And if you read that, it was the season of grapes. So he said, bring some fruit back from the land. Let me check it out and see what's going on in the promised land, right? So 40 days later, they come back. They brought grapes, they brought pomegranates, and they brought figs, and they showed him. And they said the land flows with milk and honey. But, said, the people are strong, the cities are fortified, and we saw the people and the descendants of Anak. Basically, they saw giants, the descendant of giants, okay? And Caleb, these are the 12 that came back and are reporting back to Israel, to Moses and the congregation. Caleb speaks up and says, they said the cities are fortified, the men are strong, they're giants. You know, there's a bunch of them. There's just, they're given all this negative attitude. And Caleb speaks up and says, let's go up now and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. Man, if we could get every leader in this church with that kind of attitude, right? Do we face obstacles here, specifically at this church? We face probably more than some of y'all even know, right? But if we could get that attitude like Caleb had, obstacle, schmobstacle, let's go. Let's go do it. God is in control. He's for us. He's with us. Let's go. Let's have the attitude. Let's go make it happen. So you get 2 people out of 12 that have the right attitude. 2 out of 12. But the other men said, this is what they said, the land is bad and it devours its inhabitants. And the people were men of great stature, and they made us look like grasshoppers, and they're stronger than us. So all these other guys are belly aching and complaining, doubting, fussing, because it's not how they want it. Right?
What did God call the report? He said they brought back an evil report. What was evil about? They were telling the truth. They were big.
Yeah.
They were bad.
Yeah.
Cities were fortified.
Yep.
They made a statement. They said, we are as grasshoppers in their sight.
Mm-hmm.
Then the report turned evil. They said, and we are as grasshoppers in our own sight.
Yep.
It wasn't what they referred as how they saw themselves. Joshua and Caleb was like, y'all got this all wrong.
So, Pastor's right. This is where it starts to turn. So all the congregation at that point jumps on the bandwagon of the 10. Not the 2, the 10. Right? Anybody ever heard the scripture, a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. A little bad attitude spreads like a wildfire. Next thing you know, you got this whole congregation. It says the children of Israel complained. It said all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept all night. So you got Caleb saying, hey, let's go. God's with us. We can do this. We are more than able to do this. We are well able to overcome them. But you got these other 10 that are like, woe is me. It's not the situation that we wanted. This is not going to work. Basically what they're saying is, it doesn't really matter what God promised us. It's not going to happen because the situation doesn't look right. The situation is not how we want it. And then it said all the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron. It said that they said, if we only had died in the land of Egypt. Wow. What your attitude will take you to so quickly.
Steve, it's like when I used to work at the hospital, and everybody knew this one nurse. She was infamous, just having a poor attitude. Now,
Yeah.
if she didn't like you, you better watch out, because she'd come after you. She would find something that you supposedly did wrong, and she'd go tell every other nurse and every other assistant on the floor. Then she'd try to turn people toward you. And new nurses, she'd try to eat them up. Like, it's like nurses, it's true, like nurses eat their own. Like, they're so evil. But like, everybody knew this nurse, and like, and every time the new nurses would come in on like evening shift, and I worked at 12, so I stayed from morning to part of evening, and they'd be like, oh, she's here, and everybody would just immediately, their attitudes would change because they knew she was there, and she would bring this bad attitude.
Little leaven,
and everybody
leaveneth the whole
was,
lump.
you know,
Yeah.
just tense around her because she was always just me. There was no unity. There was no well, that's not my problem. If they, because we always tried to help each other. I mean, we had enough patient load, but if somebody else needed help or they couldn't get an IV in, let's go and try to help that person. And she would be like, no, I ain't got time. And so it just caused, every time there's just this one person, and we probably have 4 other nurses, including LPNs, assistants, on the floor, and that one person would change the whole attitude of the whole floor
Yes.
every time.
And probably all of you guys have stories around work or family that's like that. One person changed the whole room, right?
Bill did an illustration, I don't know if it was in here or not, but
Talk loud.
he did an illustration that if you have one bad apple
Yeah.
in a bucket full of good apples, it's gonna turn all of those bad. So it's the same with the attitude. Like, if you bad attitude, you're gonna change everybody around you.
And so, again, perception, what we were talking about to start with, right?
Sorry.
As it starts, Siri's chiming in too. As it starts to turn, it starts to snowball, right? Because then everybody jumps on this negative attitude bandwagon. So the children of Israel were like, well, it's better that we have died in Egypt or in the wilderness. Why did the Lord bring us to this land to die by the sword? Why did he bring us to here to be killed by giants, right? And then it said we would be better off to return to Egypt. They go as far to say, let's select a new leader and take off back to Egypt. See how quickly God is sitting there promising them Canaan, the promised land. He's like, I've got a land of milk and honey I'm going to take you to.
He even said that he would drive them out.
Yeah.
He would drive them out.
Yeah. But you see how attitude can affect. I'm trying to get this across to us. Our attitude, okay, let's break away from this for a minute. Let's bring it back to the church. Our attitude is so powerful with what we're going to accomplish here as a church, as a family. It's why we went through excellence for 6 weeks. It's why we've been talking about all these different subjects for so long. Because we are learning, we are educating spiritually, we're growing, preparing to have what it takes for God to move us to the next level. And attitude is a huge, huge part of that. if you're going to be a leader in the church, you need to be mindful of your attitude. If you're going to be a worker in the church, you need to be mindful of your attitude. If you're going to be a servant in the church, you got to be mindful of your attitude. If you're going to be a pastor in the church, you got to be mindful of your attitude. Right? Y'all all know the joke where the guy was asleep and his mom comes in to wake him up on Sunday morning and says, it's time to get up and go to church. And he's like, nah, Mom, I'm not going to church today. I just don't feel like it. She's like, no, you got to get up and go to church. He's like, no, I just can't take those people anymore. I mean, I just can't. They're just too much to deal with. I'm not going to church today. And she's like, son, you've got to get up. You're the pastor, you know? Right? So even as a pastor, you've got to have the right attitude. So, all right? So Joshua and Caleb, they start pleading to the congregation, right? And said, the Lord is or the land rather, I can't even read my own writing. The land is an exceeding good land. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us. Don't fear the people of this land. They are our bread, he said. Okay? He also said, their protection has departed them. So we got 10 guys over here saying, we're all going to die. These giants are about to just roll us and we're going to die. We cannot take this land. And then you got 2 over here that saying, God's with us. Their protection has departed them. There's nothing that we can't do if God's with us and represents us. Then it said the people wanted to stone him. Right? So you see where I'm going with this. Do you see how we know how this story ends? God says, well, okay, if that's how you guys are going to be, you're not going into the promised land. Your whole generation gets wiped out of the promised land. You can stay in the wilderness and you can wander around for 40 years until all y'all die, and then your kids can go ahead and go into the promised land. Do you see how the outcome was changed based upon the attitude that they started with? Now, can we relate that back to whatever you're doing at church? Whether you're starting to learn a new mime with your mime team that had all bad attitudes tonight. Or maybe it was just Danielle or Kathy.
Maybe it was just Bethany.
Maybe it was just Bethany.
I was in the best mood.
But you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's how you start your project.
Or complain about the song before they even hear it.
Yep.
Me-
Would you like to gather your mime
it.
team up and bring him in here to hear this?
I can preach on this.
We're going to have it on YouTube. They can check it out.
I will send it to them.
No.
Maybe it's
I'm gonna show you.
like
It's on
Jack
my
is one of our
listen to it.
greeters. So maybe he comes in with a bad attitude on Sunday morning. Well, I didn't want to be here this early. I ain't in a good mood anyway. I'm hurting. I'm hungry. I didn't sleep good last night. I didn't feel like smiling at people when they come in. Well, how's Jack's greeting going to go that morning? How welcome are people going to feel?
Welcome to church.
Glad you're here, whatever. It's going to affect the whole outcome of the whole reason that he's back there and the other greeters are back there, the hospitality team. Same way for me, if I come into worship practice on Sunday morning and I've just got a bad attitude, which has happened before. Told y'all I'm honest. I could set a whole atmosphere with our worship team before service even starts. The wrong atmosphere and not see what God truly wants to do on Sunday morning because my attitude was wrong before we ever even started.
And carry on.
And yeah,
Carry on to the
you guys see what's going on stage. You feel the atmosphere. You feel what's happening on stage, and then you react to it back here. Just the same way, like Debbie was saying, when that one nurse would come in, everybody would start to react based on how she acted. The same way these the congregation of Israel was reacting based upon how these 10 spies that went to check out the land were acting. It has that effect. So, the Bible said that Caleb had a different spirit in him. And so I think it's funny. Caleb was showing a good attitude. And then the Bible says he had a different spirit in him. I think that shows us that attitude and spiritual maturity go hand in hand. Everybody nod your head yes. Attitude and spiritual maturity go hand in hand. Well, what is spiritual maturity? Anybody care to chime in on what you think spiritual maturity is? It's not just knowing the Bible.
Thinking before you speak.
Thinking before you speak, okay? That's a good sign of maturity. What else?
Self-control.
Self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit, which shows maturity. Spiritual maturity. What do we have?
It's kinda like you said, do what God tells you to, not what you want to do.
Yep. That's a big sign of maturity. And think about it, not just spiritual maturity, that goes with just everyday life. When our kids do what we tell them to, not based upon what they want to do and they think they know best, but they just get in line with authority and do what mom and dad says, they're showing maturity. They can show maturity at a very young age, right? You don't have to be saved for 20 years to be spiritually mature. You can show maturity at a younger age, just based upon knowing, hey, your attitude is right, you're willing to align with God's authority in your life, and you're willing to grow, and you're willing to learn, you're willing to be taught, you're willing to think before you speak, you're willing to react in the right ways. So your spiritual maturity and your attitude are going to go hand in hand. Spiritual maturity brings a good attitude, which helps. Let's break that down. Spiritual maturity brings a good attitude. Being spiritually mature, all the things we just said, helps you to have the right attitude. Okay? And then a good attitude helps you to be spiritually mature. They go hand in hand. They work together. That makes sense? Say it loud.
No.
Was that a bust on Keith?
No.
I don't know what she said.
No, it was stupid.
Let me make sure I'm not skipping over something I wanted to hit. Okay. Because of negativity or attitude, bad attitude, they couldn't trust God. How many times have we found ourselves not being able to trust God because we didn't have the right attitude? We weren't spiritually mature enough to just take God at what he said. Right? And just say, okay, God, if that's what you said, it doesn't matter how big the giants are. It doesn't matter whatever we're seeing, that they're stronger than us or more than us, whatever the odds are against us. It doesn't matter because you said this. So I'm going to be spiritually mature enough to keep my attitude in check, and we're going to press forward and we're going to do what you told us to do. So because they weren't, they were negative and didn't have the right attitude, they couldn't trust God, which showed a lack of spiritual maturity, and they rebelled. That's what they did. They rebelled. They didn't follow God's command, which again, rebellion shows a poor attitude and a lack of maturity. Let's go back to the example of me and Pastor. If I'd have just said, well, I'm not doing it that way. I don't think your way's right. We're going to do it my way, or I just ain't doing it. How mature would I have been? Matter of fact, I'd have been pretty immature. And it definitely wouldn't have shown a good attitude. Right? So, rebellion showed a lack of maturity. It showed a poor attitude. And they disobeyed, which again showed a lack of spiritual maturity because they weren't obedient to God, which again showed a poor attitude. They just circle around each other. They were so upset at the judgment that God passed on them that said, 40 years you're just going to wander in the wilderness. Let me show you what poor attitude and lack of spiritual maturity made them do. They were so upset They were just distraught. Oh my gosh, God's just condemned us to the wilderness for 40 years. Okay, well, God, we're sorry. We'll do better now. Come on, guys, let's go up. Let's go. Let's go take, let's go take over. Let's charge in. Let's go up to the mountain. And Moses said, y'all done missed the boat, man. It ain't going to work. God is not with you right now. The Ark of the Covenant is not with you right now. You are going to fail. Do not do this. Right? What did they do? Anybody know what they did? They disobeyed again. And they went anyway. And they had a futile attempt because they were driven right back and made no headway and were stuck in the wilderness for 40 years until they all died off. So this is a real good example. As far as we'll probably get tonight. We'll pick up on the next one next week. But this is a real good example of how attitude can affect your outcome in almost anything. But specifically, we're talking about your spiritual maturity for your own individual self, and we're talking about your service in the church, whether that be in leadership, servanthood, just working along with other people, just getting things accomplished for the kingdom, just doing what a lot of people struggle with this, but sometimes we just need to do what our leaders ask us to do, right? And I'm not just saying that because I'm one of the leaders in the church.
I said that this week,
Yeah.
didn't I? I just want to point that out.
Yeah. Well, so an example, I came to Bethany a week or so ago, Bethany and Skylar and Leanne, all three of them. And there was something specific. Again, me being in authority to the pastor, he said, this is what I want you to do. So I was obedient. I go to those people and I say, here's what we need to do. And I'm sure they really probably didn't want to do it that way, if we're being honest, as they all sit and giggle and laugh and shake their heads at me. Because they were probably like, well, we don't need to do that. I'm sure that that's probably what they thought, right? None of them said that. They was like, okay, if that's what you want to do, that's what we'll do. And verbatim, since then, is exactly what's been followed, which just shows good attitude and spiritual maturity. So, hand clap for you guys. But that's just an example, right? Your attitude, whether you're serving in a church, or even at work, even in your family, right? Tonight's our challenge. From tonight until next Wednesday, think, how's my attitude? Before you start a project at work tomorrow, how's my attitude? Is it going to affect, before you do something at the house, how's my attitude? Is it going to affect, before you start something in a church Sunday morning, when we all roll up in here on Sunday morning, before you do your work on Sunday morning, whatever you're assigned to, because we've been doing a lot of new things in the church, whatever you're assigned to, think, hey, is my attitude in check? Is it where it needs to be before I go serve? Because it will affect your outcome. Yeah, I've got 8 o'clock. We're going to shut it down. Thank you, guys. I hope everybody's going to like this new series. We'll pick up with number 6 next week.